Chapter 1. About the evaluation. Sun Tzu says, "War is of vital importance to the state, it is the domain of life or death, the path to the survival or loss of the empire, it is necessary to manage it well. Not to reflect seriously on everything that concerns you is to show a guilty indifference regarding the conservation or loss of what is most dear to us, and this should not happen between us. It is necessary to assess it in terms of 5 fundamental factors, and make comparisons between various conditions of the rival sides, with a view to determining the outcome of the war. The first of these factors is doctrine, the second, time, the third, the land, the fourth, command, and the fifth, discipline. The doctrine means that which makes the people be in harmony with their ruler, so that they follow him wherever, without fearing for their lives or running any danger. Weather signifies yin and yang, night and day, hot and cold, clear or rainy days, and the changing of the seasons. The terrain implies the distances, and refers to where it is easy or difficult to move, and if it is open country or narrow places, and this influences the chances of survival. Command must have the following qualities: wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage and discipline. Finally, discipline must be understood as the organization of the army, the ranks among officers, the regulation of supply routes, and the provision of military material to the army. These 5 fundamental factors must be known by every general. He who dominates them, wins, he who does not, is defeated. Therefore, in making plans, the following 7 factors should be compared, weighing each one with the greatest care. Which leader is wiser and more capable? What commander has the most talent? Which army gets advantages from nature and terrain? In which army are regulations and instructions best observed? What troops are stronger? What army is better trained officers and troops? Which army administers rewards and punishments more fairly? By studying these 7 factors, I will be able to guess which of the 2 sides will be victorious and which will be defeated. The general who follows my advice is sure to win. That general must be kept in command. Who ignore my advice, certainly will be defeated. That must be removed. After heeding my advice and plans, the general must create a situation that will contribute to its fulfillment. By situation I mean that you should take into consideration the situation on the field, and act according to what is to your advantage. The art of war is based on deception. Therefore, when he is capable of attacking, he must appear incapable, when troops move, appear inactive. If he is close to the enemy, he has to make him believe that he is far away. If it's far away, pretend you're close. Put bait to lure the enemy. Hit the enemy when he is messed up. Prepare against him when he is safe everywhere. Avoid during a time when it is stronger. If your opponent has a choleric temper, try to irritate him. If he is arrogant, try to encourage their selfishness. If the enemy troops are well prepared after a reorganization, try to throw them into disorder. If they are united, sowing dissension among their ranks. Attacks the enemy when he is not ready, and appears when he is not expecting you. These are the keys to victory for the strategist. Now, if the estimates made before the battle indicate victory, it is because the carefully made calculations show that your conditions are more favorable than the enemy's conditions. If they indicate defeat, it is because they show that the favorable conditions for battle are less. With careful evaluation, one can win; without it, you can't. Much fewer chances of victory will have one who does not perform calculations at all. Thanks to this method, the situation can be examined, and the result appears clearly. Chapter 2. About the initiation of actions. Once the battle has started, even if you are winning, if it continues for too long, it will discourage your troops and blunt your sword. If you are besieging a town, you will exhaust your strength. If you keep your army on campaign for a long time, your supplies will run out. Weapons are instruments of bad luck. Using them for a long time will produce calamities. As it has been said, those who kill with iron, die with iron. When your troops are discouraged, your sword blunted, your strength exhausted, and your supplies low, even your people will take advantage of your weakness to rise up. So even if you have wise advisors, in the end you won't be able to make things work out. For this reason, I have heard of military operations that have been clumsy and sudden. But I have never seen any expert in the art of war keep up the campaign for a long time. It is never beneficial for a country to let a military operation drag on for long. As is commonly said, be quick as thunder that rolls before you can stop your ears, quick as lightning that flashes before you can blink. Therefore, those who are not fully aware of the disadvantage of using weapons cannot be fully aware of the advantages of using them. Those who expertly use military means do not activate their troops twice, nor provide food 3 times, for the same purpose. This means that the people should not be mobilized more than once per campaign, and that immediately after achieving victory they should not return to their own country to make a second mobilization. At first this means providing food for one's own troops, but then food is taken away from the enemy. If you take your own country's weapon supplies, but take food away from the enemy, you can be well stocked with weapons and supplies. When a country becomes impoverished by military operations, it is due to the transportation of supplies from a distant place. If you transport them from a distant place, the village will be impoverished. Those who live close to where the army is can sell their crops at high prices, but in this way the well-being of the majority of the population is depleted. When provisions are transported very far, people are ruined because of the high cost. In the markets near the army, the prices of the goods are increased. Therefore, the long military campaigns are a scourge for the country. When resources are depleted, taxes are collected under pressure. When power and resources have been exhausted, the country itself is ruined. The people are deprived of a large part of their budget, while government spending on armaments rises. The inhabitants constitute the base of a country, the food is the happiness of the people. The prince must respect this fact and be sober and austere in his public expenses. Consequently, an intelligent general strives to deprive the enemy of his food. Each portion of food taken from the enemy is equal to 20 that you supply yourself. Thus, what devastates the enemy is recklessness, and the motivation of yours to assume the benefits of the adversaries. When you reward your men with the benefits that the adversaries had, you will make them fight on their own initiative, and thus you can take the power and influence that the enemy had. This is why it is said that where there are great rewards there are brave men. Therefore, in a chariot battle, first reward the one who takes at least 10 cars. If you reward everyone, there won't be enough for everyone, so offer a reward to one soldier to cheer everyone else up. Change their colors, of the enemy soldiers taken prisoner, use them mixed with yours. Treat the soldiers well and pay attention to them. The imprisoned soldiers must be treated well, to get them to fight for you in the future. This is called defeating the adversary and increasing your own strength as well. If you use the enemy to defeat the enemy, you will be powerful wherever you go. Thus, the most important thing in a military operation is victory and not persistence. The latter is not beneficial. An army is like fire, if you don't put it out, it will burn itself out. Therefore, we know that the one at the head of the army is in charge of the lives of the inhabitants and the security of the nation. Chapter 3. On the propositions of victory and defeat. As a general rule, it is better to keep an enemy intact than to destroy it. Capture their soldiers to conquer them and dominate their bosses. A general said, "Practice martial arts, calculate the strength of your opponents, make them lose their spirit and direction, so that even if the enemy army is intact it is useless. This is winning without violence. If you destroy the enemy army and kill their generals, you assault their defenses by shooting, you assemble a mob and usurp a territory, all this is winning by force. Because of this, the ones who win all the battles are not really professionals. Those who make the armies of others render impotent without fighting are the best masters of the art of war. The superior warriors attack while the enemies are planning their plans. They then undo their alliances. That is why a great emperor said, 'He who fights for victory against drawn swords is not a good general.' The worst tactic is to attack a city. Siege, cornering a city, is only carried out as a last resort. Spend no less than 3 months preparing your artifacts and another 3 months coordinating resources for your siege. You should never attack out of anger and in a hurry. It is advisable to take time in the planning and coordination of the plan. Therefore, a true master of martial arts defeats other enemy forces without a battle, conquers other cities without besieging them, and destroys other armies without spending much time. A skilled master of martial arts undoes the plans of enemies, ruins their relationships and alliances, cuts off their supplies or blocks their path, winning through these tactics without the need to fight. It is essential to fight against all enemy factions to obtain a complete victory, so that your army is not garrisoned and the benefit is total. This is the law of strategic siege. Complete victory occurs when the army does not fight, the city is not besieged, the destruction does not last long, and in each case the enemy is defeated by the use of strategy. Thus, the rule of the use of force is the following: if your forces are 10 times superior to those of the adversary, surround him; if they are 5 times higher, attack it; if they are twice as many, divide it. If your forces are equal in number, fight if you can. If your forces are inferior, be constantly on your guard, because the smallest failure would bring you the worst consequences. Try to stay sheltered and avoid an open confrontation with him if possible. The prudence and firmness of a small number of people can tire and dominate even numerous armies. This advice applies in cases where all factors are equal. If your forces are in order while theirs are in chaos, if you and your forces are in high spirits and they are demoralized, then even if they are more numerous, you can go into battle. If your soldiers, your forces, your strategy, and your courage are less than those of your adversary, then you must retreat and find a way out. Consequently, if the smaller side is obstinate, it falls prisoner to the larger side. This means that if a small army does not make a proper assessment of its power and dares to make enemies with a great power, no matter how firm its defense is, it will inevitably become conquered. If you can't be strong, but you don't know how to be weak either, you will be defeated. The generals are servants of the people. When their service is complete, the people are strong. When your service is faulty, the people are weak. Thus, there are 3 ways in which a prince leads the army to disaster. When a prince, ignorant of the facts, orders his armies to advance or withdraw when they should not, this is called immobilizing the army. When a prince is ignorant of military affairs but shares equal command of the army, the soldiers are left confused. When the prince is ignorant of how to carry out military maneuvers, but equally shares his direction, the soldiers are hesitant. Once the armies are confused and wavering, problems begin from the adversaries. This is called losing the victory by upsetting the military aspect. If you try to use the methods of a civilian government to run a military operation, the operation will be confusing. Those who succeed, they know when to fight and when not to. They can discern when to use many or few troops. They have troops whose higher and lower ranks have the same goal. They confront unsuspecting enemies with preparations. They have competent generals and are not limited by their civil governments. These 5 are the ways to meet the future winner. Talking about the prince being the one who gives the orders in everything is like the general asking the prince for permission to put out a fire. By the time it is authorized, there are only ashes left. If you know others and you know yourself, not even in 100 battles will you be in danger. If you don't know others, but you know yourself, you will lose 1 battle and win another. If you don't know others and don't know yourself, you will be in danger in every battle. Chapter 4. On the measure and the provision of means. In the old days, skilled warriors made themselves invincible first, then waited to discover their opponent's vulnerability. Making yourself invincible means knowing yourself. Waiting to discover the vulnerability of the adversary means knowing others. Invincibility is in oneself, vulnerability in the adversary. Because of this, skilled warriors can be invincible, but they cannot make their opponents vulnerable. If your adversaries have no order of battle to report on, no negligence or failure to take advantage of, how can you defeat them even when they are well equipped? This is why it is said that victory can be perceived, but not manufactured. Invincibility is a matter of defense, vulnerability a matter of attack. As long as you have not observed vulnerabilities in the opponent's order of battle, hide your own attack formation, and prepare to be invincible, in order to preserve yourself. When adversaries have vulnerable battle orders, it's time to go out and attack them. Defense is for times of scarcity, attack for times of plenty. Defense experts hide in the depths of the earth, experts in attack maneuvers hide in the highest heights of the sky. In this way they can protect themselves and achieve total victory. In defense situations, you silence the voices and erase the traces, hiding like ghosts and spirits underground, invisible to everyone. In situations of attack, your movement is fast and your flashing cry, fast as thunder and lightning, for which one cannot prepare, even if they come from heaven. Anticipating victory when anyone can know it is not true skill. Everyone praises the victory won in battle, but that victory is not really that good. Everyone praises victory in battle, but what is truly desirable is to be able to see the world of the subtle and realize the world of the occult, to the point of being able to achieve victory where there is no form. It doesn't take much strength to lift a hair, you don't need sharp eyesight to see the sun and moon, and you don't need keen ears to hear the rumble of thunder. What everyone knows is not called wisdom. Victory over others gained through battle is not considered a good victory. In ancient times, those who were known as good warriors won when it was easy. Overcome. If you are only able to secure victory after facing an adversary in an armed conflict, that victory is a hard victory. If you are able to see the subtle and realize the hidden, breaking in before the order of battle, the victory thus obtained is an easy victory. Consequently, the victories of good warriors do not stand out for their intelligence or bravery. Thus, the victories they win in battle are not due to luck. His victories are not by chance, but are due to having previously placed himself in a position to be able to win safely, prevailing over those who have already lost beforehand. Great wisdom is not something obvious, great merit is not announced. When you are able to see the subtle, it is easy to win. What does this have to do with intelligence or bravery? When problems are solved before they arise, who calls this intelligence? When there is victory without a battle, who speaks of bravery? Thus, good warriors take a stand on ground where they cannot lose, and do not overlook the conditions that make their adversary prone to defeat. Consequently, a victorious army wins first and engages in battle later. A defeated army fights first and tries to win later. This is the difference between those who have a strategy and those who do not have premeditated plans. Those who use weapons well cultivate the way and observe the laws. Thus they can govern prevailing over the corrupt. Use harmony to dispel opposition, do not attack an innocent army, do not take prisoners or take loot where the army passes, do not cut down the trees or contaminating the wells, cleaning and purifying the temples of the cities and mountains on the path you cross, not repeating the mistakes of a decadent civilization. All this is called the path and its laws. When the army is strictly disciplined, to the point where soldiers would die rather than disobey orders, and rewards and punishments are trusted and well established, when commanders and officers are able to act in this way, they can defeat a corrupted enemy prince. There are 5 military rules: measurement, valuation, calculation, comparison, and victory. The terrain gives rise to measurements, these give rise to valuations, the valuations give rise to calculations, these give rise to comparisons, and comparisons give rise to victories. Through the comparisons of the dimensions, you can know where there is victory or defeat. Consequently, a victorious army is like a kilo compared to a gram, a defeated army is like a gram compared to a kilo. When the winner gets his people to go into battle as if he were directing a great stream of water into a deep canyon, this is a matter of order of battle. When water accumulates in a deep canyon, no one can measure its quantity, just as our defense does not show its shape. When the water is released, it rushes down like a torrent, as irresistible as our own attack. Chapter 5. About firmness. The force is the accumulated energy or the one that is perceived. This is very changeable. Experts are capable of defeating the enemy by creating a favorable perception in them, thus obtaining victory without the need to exert their strength. Governing over many people as if they were few is a matter of dividing them into groups or sectors. It is organization. Battle against large numbers of troops as few as possible is a matter of displaying strength, symbols and signals. It refers to achieving a perception of strength and power in the opposition. On the battlefield, it refers to the formations and flags used to deploy troops and coordinate their movements. Making the army capable of fighting the adversary without being defeated is a matter of using orthodox or heterodox methods. Orthodoxy and heterodoxy is not something fixed, but used as a cycle. An emperor, who was a famous warrior and administrator, spoke of manipulating adversaries' perceptions of what is orthodox and what is unorthodox, and then attacking unexpectedly, combining both methods into one, thus rendering himself indefinable to the enemy. That the effect of forces is like that of stones thrown on eggs is a matter of full and empty. When you induce opponents to attack you in your territory, their force is always empty, at a disadvantage. As long as you don't compete on who is the best, your strength will always be full. Attacking with the empty against the full is like throwing stones at eggs, they are sure to break. When a battle is engaged directly, victory is won by surprise. The direct attack is orthodox. The indirect attack is heterodox. There are only 2 kinds of attacks in battle, the extraordinary by surprise and the ordinary direct, but their variants are innumerable. The orthodox and the heterodox originate from each other, like a circle without beginning or end. Who could exhaust them? When the speed of the flowing water reaches the point where it can move the stones, this is the direct force. When the falcon's speed and maneuverability is such that it can attack and kill, this is precision. The same is true of skilled warriors, their strength is swift, their precision unerring. Its strength is like firing a catapult, its accuracy is to hit the intended target and cause the expected effect. Disorder comes from order, cowardice comes from courage, weakness comes from strength. If you want to feign disorder to convince your opponents and distract them, you must first organize order, because only then can you create artificial disorder. If you want to feign cowardice in order to learn the opponent's strategy, you first have to be extremely brave, because only then can you act artificially timid. If you want to feign weakness to induce arrogance in your enemies, you must first be extremely strong, because only then can you feign weakness. Order and disorder are a matter of organization, cowardice is a matter of courage and impetus, strength and weakness are a matter of training in battle. When an army has the force of momentum, perception, even the timid becomes brave. When it loses the force of momentum, even the brave becomes timid. Nothing is fixed in the laws of war, they develop on the basis of momentum. With cunning you can anticipate and get your opponents to convince themselves how to proceed and move, it helps them to walk on the path that it traces for them. It makes enemies move with the prospect of triumph, so that they fall into the ambush. Good warriors seek effectiveness in battle from the force of momentum, perception, and do not rely solely on the strength of their soldiers. They are able to pick the best people, deploy them properly, and let the force of momentum achieve its goals. When there is enthusiasm, conviction, order, organization, resources, commitment of the soldiers, you have the strength of impetus, and the timid is courageous. Thus it is possible to assign the soldiers by their abilities, skills and entrust them with appropriate duties and responsibilities. The brave can fight, the careful can serve as sentinel, and the intelligent can study, analyze, and communicate. Each one is useful. Making soldiers fight by allowing the force of momentum to do its work is like rolling rocks. Rocks remain stationary when they are on a flat place, but they roll on an inclined plane. They stay fixed when they are square, but they rotate if they are round. Therefore, when men are led into battle by cunning, the impulse is like round rocks tumbling down the mountain. This is the force that produces victory. Chapter 6. About the full and the empty. Those who anticipate, prepare, and arrive first on the battlefield and wait for the adversary are in a rested position. Those who arrive last on the battlefield, those who improvise and start the fight are exhausted. Good warriors make adversaries come to them, and in no way allow themselves to be lured out of their fortress. If you make opponents come to you to fight, their force will always be empty. If you don't go out to fight, your force will always be full. This is the art of emptying others and filling yourself. What drives opponents to come at you of their own free will is the prospect of winning. What discourages opponents from coming at you is the chance of taking damage. When adversaries are in a favorable position, you must tire them out. When they are well fed, cut off supplies. When they are resting, get them moving. Attacks unexpectedly, causing opponents to exhaust themselves by running for their lives. Disrupt their supplies, lay waste their fields, and cut off their supply lines. It appears in critical places and attacks where they least expect it, causing them to have to come to the rescue. It appears where they cannot go, it goes where they least expect it. To move hundreds of kilometers without fatigue, cross uninhabited lands. Attacking an open space does not just mean a space in which the enemy has no defense. As long as your defense is not strict, the place is not well guarded, the enemies will scatter before you, as if you were crossing an uninhabited territory. To unerringly take what you attack, attack where there is no defense. To maintain an unerringly secure defense, defend where there is no attack. Thus, in the case of those who are experts in attack, their enemies do not know where to attack. When instructions are followed, people are sincerely loyal and committed. Defense plans and preparations firmly in place, being so subtle and secretive that strategies are not revealed in any way, and adversaries feel insecure, and their intelligence it is of no use to them. Be extremely subtle, discreet, to the point of being formless. Be completely mysterious and confidential, to the point of being silent. In this way you will be able to direct the destiny of your adversaries. To advance without encountering resistance, attack their weak points. To retreat evasively, be faster than them. Military situations are all about speed, arrive like the wind, move like lightning, and your adversaries won't be able to beat you. Therefore, when you want to go into battle, even if the opponent is entrenched in a defensive position, he will not be able to avoid fighting if you attack in the place where he must inevitably come to the rescue. When you don't want to go into battle, even if you draw a line on the terrain you want to keep, the opponent can't fight you because you give him a false clue. This means that when adversaries come to attack you, you don't fight them, but instead establish a strategic shift to confuse and fill them with uncertainty. Therefore, when you induce others to form a formation, while you yourself remain formless, you are concentrated, while your adversary is divided. Make adversaries see as extraordinary what is ordinary to you, make them see as ordinary what is extraordinary to you. This is inducing the enemy to make a training. Once you have seen the opponent's formation, you concentrate your troops against him. Since your formation is out of sight, the adversary will surely split their forces. When you are concentrated as a single force, while the enemy is divided into 10, you are attacking with a concentration of 1 against 10, so your forces outnumber theirs. If you can attack a few soldiers with many, you will decimate the number of your adversaries. When you are strongly entrenched, you have made yourself strong behind good barricades, and you do not let any information about your forces leak. Go outside without precise formation, attack and conquer in an irrepressible way. They don't have to know where you plan to fight the battle, because when you don't know, the enemy sets up many lookout posts, and by the time many posts are established you only have to fight against small units. Thus, when your vanguard is ready, your rearguard is defective, and when your rearguard is ready, your vanguard has weak points. The preparations of his right wing will mean lack in his left wing. Preparations everywhere will mean being vulnerable everywhere. This means that when troops are on duty in many places, they are necessarily scattered in small units. When you have few soldiers, you are on the defensive against your adversary. Having many makes the enemy have to defend himself. The more defenses you induce your enemy to adopt, the weaker he will become. Thus, if you know the place and date of the battle, you can go to it even if you are 1,000 kilometers away. If you do not know the place and date of the battle, then your left flank cannot save your right, your vanguard cannot save your rear, and your rear cannot save your vanguard, even in a territory of a few dozen of kilometers. If you have a lot more troops than the others, how can this factor help you to win? If you don't know the place and the date of the battle, even if your troops are more numerous than theirs, how can you know if you are going to win or lose? Thus, it is said that victory can be created. If you make the adversaries not know the place and the date of the battle, you can always overcome. Even if the enemies are numerous, they can be made not to engage in combat. Therefore, make your assessment on them to find out their plans, and determine which strategy can be successful and which is not. Goad them into action to find out what the general scheme of their movements is and rest. Do something for or against them for their attention, so that you can engage them to discover their attacking and defensive behavior habits. Induce them to adopt specific formations, to know their weaknesses. This means using many methods to confuse and disturb the enemy in order to observe their response ways towards you. Having observed them, you act accordingly, so that you can know which kind of situations mean life and which means death. Try them out to find out their strengths and weaknesses. Therefore, the end point of the formation of an army is to reach the formless. When you have no form, informants cannot discover anything, since information cannot create a strategy. Since you have no discernible form, you leave no traces to be followed, informers find no crack to look through, and those in charge of planning cannot lay down any workable plan. Victory over crowds through precise formations must be unknown to crowds. Everyone knows the way in which he was victorious, but no one knows the way in which he secured victory. Consequently, victory in war is not repetitive, but continually adapts its form. Determining the appropriate changes means not repeating previous strategies to gain victory. To achieve it, I can adapt from the beginning to any formation that the opponents can adopt. Formations are like water. The nature of water is to avoid above and go below. The nature of armies is to avoid the full and attack the empty. The flow of water is determined by the land. Victory is determined by the adversary. Thus, an army does not have a constant formation, just as water does not have a constant form. The ability to obtain victory by changing and adapting according to the enemy is called genius. Chapter 7. On direct and indirect confrontation. The ordinary rule for the use of the army is that the command of the army receive orders from the civil authorities and then assemble and concentrate the troops, quartering them together. Nothing is more difficult than armed struggle. Fighting with others face to face to gain advantage is the hardest thing in the world. The difficulty of armed struggle is to make long distances close and to turn problems into advantages. While giving the appearance of being far away, you start your way and arrive before the enemy. Thus, you make his route long, luring him in with the hope of winning. When you start the march after the others and arrive before them, you know the strategy of making the distances close. Use a special unit to deceive the enemy by luring him into a false pursuit, making him believe that the bulk of your forces is very far away, so, you launch a surprise strike force that arrives first, though it hit the road later. Consequently, armed struggle can be profitable and it can be dangerous. For the expert it is beneficial, for the inexperienced dangerous. Mobilizing the entire army for combat in order to gain some advantage would take a long time, but fighting for an advantage with an incomplete army would result in a lack of resources. If you move quickly and non-stop day and night, covering twice the usual distance, and if you fight for any advantage thousands of miles away, your warlords will be taken prisoner. The strong soldiers will get there first, the most tired ones will get there later. As a general rule, only 1 in 10 will make it. When the route is long, the troops get tired. If they have spent their strength in mobilization, they arrive exhausted while their adversaries are fresh. Thus, it is certain that they will be attacked. Fighting for an advantage 30 miles away will thwart the command's plans, and as a general rule, only half the soldiers will. If you fight for an advantage 30 kilometers away, only 2 out of 3 soldiers will go there. Thus, an army perishes if it is not equipped, if it does not have provisions, or if it does not have money. These 3 things are necessary. You cannot fight to win with an unequipped army, or without supplies, which money makes easy. Therefore, if you ignore the plans of your rivals, you cannot make precise alliances. Unless you know the mountains and the forests, the ravines and passes, and the condition of the swamps, you cannot maneuver with an armed force. Unless you use local guides, you cannot take advantage of the terrain. Only when you know every detail of the ground condition can you maneuver and make war. Consequently, a military force is used according to the intended strategy, mobilized through the expectation of reward, and adapts through division and combination. A military force is established by strategy in the sense that you distract the enemy so that he cannot know what your real situation is and cannot assert his supremacy. It is mobilized through the hope of reward, in the sense that it goes into action when it sees the possibility of gaining an advantage. Splitting and recombining troops is done to confuse your opponent and see how they react to you. This way you can adapt to gain victory. That is why when a military force moves quickly it is like the wind, when it goes slowly it is like the forest, it is voracious as fire and immobile as mountains. It is fast as the wind in the sense that it comes without warning and disappears like lightning. It is like a forest because it has an order. It is voracious like fire that devastates a plain without leaving behind a single blade of grass. It is immobile like a mountain when quartered. It is as difficult to know as darkness, its movement is like rumbling thunder. To occupy a place, divide your troops. To expand your territory, split the profits. The general rule of military operations is to deprive the enemy of food as much as possible. However, in localities where people do not have much, it is necessary to divide the troops into smaller groups so that they can take what they need from various parts, since only then will they have enough. As for dividing the loot, it means that it is necessary to distribute it among the troops to keep what has been won, not letting the enemy get it back. Act after making an estimate. The one who first knows the measure of what is far and what is near wins. This is the general rule of armed struggle. The first to make the move is the guest, the last is the host. The guest has it difficult, the host has it easy. Near and far mean displacement, tiredness, hunger, and cold arise from displacement. An old book dealing with military affairs says, "Words are not heard, for that cymbals and drums are made. Flags and banners are made because of lack of visibility." Cymbals, drums, flags, and banners are used to focus and unify the ears and eyes of the soldiers. Once they are unified, the brave cannot act alone, nor can the timid withdraw alone. This is the general rule of employing a group. Unifying the ears and eyes of soldiers means making them look and listen in unison so they don't get confused and disordered. Signs are used to indicate directions and prevent individuals from going where they please. So, in night battles, use fires and drums, and in day battles use flags and banners, to manipulate the ears and eyes of the soldiers. Use many signals to confuse the enemy's perceptions and make them fear your fearsome military power. In this way, you drain the energy of their armies and demoralize their generals. First of all, you have to be able to stand firm in your own heart, only then can you demoralize the enemy generals. For this reason, tradition affirms that the inhabitants of other times had the firmness to demoralize, and the ancient law of those who drove battle chariots said that when the original mind is firm, fresh energy is victorious. In this way, the energy of the morning is full of ardor, that of noon wanes and the energy of the night withdraws. Consequently, experts in handling weapons prefer enthusiastic energy, attack decadent and retreating energy. They are the ones who dominate the energy. Any weakling in the world is ready to fight in a minute if he feels encouraged, but when it comes to actually taking up arms and going into battle, he is possessed by energy. When this energy fades, you will stop, be scared, and regret starting. The reason such armies look down on strong enemies, the same way they look down on virgin maidens, is because they are taking advantage of their aggressiveness, stimulated by whatever cause. Using order to deal with disorder, using calm to deal with those who are agitated. This is mastering the heart. Unless your heart is fully open and your mind is in order, you cannot expect to be able to adapt to responding without limits, to handling events infallible, to face serious and unexpected difficulties without being disturbed, directing each thing without confusion. To master strength is to wait for those who come from afar, to wait comfortably for those who have tired, and for the hungry with a full stomach. This is what is meant by drawing others to where you are, while avoiding being led to where they are. Avoiding confrontation against well-ordered combat formations and not attacking large battalions is the mastery of adaptation. Therefore, the general rule of military operations is not to face a great mountain or to oppose the enemy with his back to it. This means that if opponents are on high ground, you should not attack them uphill, and when they charge downhill, you should not engage them. Do not chase enemies when they feign a retreat, or attack expert troops. If the adversaries suddenly run away before exhausting their energy, surely there are ambushes waiting to attack your troops. In this case, you must hold your officers so that they do not chase after them. Don't eat their soldiers' food. If the enemy suddenly abandons their provisions, they must be tasted before being eaten, in case they are poisoned. Do not stop any army that is on its way to their country. Under these circumstances, an adversary will fight to the death. You have to leave a way out for a surrounded army. Show them a way to save life so they won't be willing to fight to the death, so you can take advantage of attacking them. Do not press a desperate enemy. An exhausted animal will continue to fight, for that is the law of nature. These are the laws of the military operations. Chapter 8. About the 9 changes. Usually, military operations are under the responsibility of the civilian ruler to lead the army. The general must not pitch his camp on difficult ground. Let diplomatic relations be established at the borders. Do not stay in an arid or isolated territory. When you find yourself in a closed terrain, prepare some strategy and move. When you find yourself on deadly ground, fight. Closed terrain means that there are steep places surrounding you on all sides, so the enemy is mobile, they can come and go freely, but it is difficult for you to get out and come back. Each route must be studied to be the best. There are routes not to be used, armies not to be attacked, cities not to be surrounded, terrain not to be fought over, and orders from civilian rulers not to be obeyed. Consequently, the generals who know the possible variables to take advantage of the terrain know how to manage the armed forces. If the generals do not know how to adapt to advantage, even if they know the condition of the ground, they cannot take advantage of it. If they are in command of armies, but are ignorant of the arts of total adaptability, even if they know the goal to be achieved, they cannot make the soldiers fight for it. If you are able to adjust the campaign to change according to the momentum of the forces, then the advantage does not change, and the only ones who are harmed are the enemies. For this reason, there is no permanent structure. If you can fully understand this principle, you can make the soldiers perform in the best possible way. Therefore, the intelligent person's considerations always include objectively analyzing benefit and harm. When you consider the benefit, your action expands. When you consider the damage, your problems can be solved. Benefit and harm are interdependent, and the wise take them into account. Therefore, it is damage that holds opponents back, action is what keeps them busy, and profit is what motivates them. Tires out enemies by keeping them busy and not letting them breathe. But before achieving it, you have to previously do your own work. That task is to develop a strong army, a prosperous people, a harmonious society, and an orderly way of life. Thus, the general rule of military operations is not to count on the enemy not coming, but to trust that you have the means to confront him, not counting on the adversary not attacking, but trusting in possessing what cannot be attacked. If you can always remember danger when you are safe and chaos in times of order, keep an eye on danger and chaos while they are still formless, and avoid them before they come. This is the best strategy of all. Therefore, there are 5 traits that are dangerous in generals. Those who are willing to die can lose their lives, those who want to preserve life can be taken prisoner, those who are given to irrational passions can be ridiculed, those who are very puritanical may be dishonored, those who are compassionate can be troubled. If you show up in a place that enemies are sure to rush to defend, compassionate people will invariably rush to rescue its inhabitants, causing themselves trouble and exhaustion. Here are 5 traits that are flaws in generals that are disastrous for military operations. Good generals are otherwise. They commit themselves to death, but do not cling to the hope of survival. They act according to events, rationally and realistically, without being carried away by emotions or subject to confusion. When they see a good opportunity, they are like tigers, otherwise they close their doors. Your action and non-action are matters of strategy, and cannot be pleased or angered. Chapter 9. About media distribution. Military maneuvers are the result of plans and strategies in the most advantageous way to win. They determine the mobility and effectiveness of the troops. If you are going to put your army in a position to observe the enemy, go quickly through the mountains and watch them from a valley. Consider the effect of light and stay in the highest position in the valley. When fighting on a mountain, attack from the top down, not the other way around. Fight downhill and never uphill. Prevent the water from dividing your forces, get away from unfavorable conditions as soon as possible. Don't face them enemies in the water. It is convenient to let half of your troops pass and then split them up and attack them. Don't go downstream. Don't walk against the current, or against the wind. If you camp on the bank of a river, your armies may be surprised at night, pushed to drown, or poisoned into the current. Your boats must not be moored downstream, to prevent the enemy from taking advantage of the current by launching their boats against you. If you go through swamps, do it quickly. If you find yourself facing an army in the middle of a swamp, stay close to their aquatic plants or backed by trees. On a plain, take positions that are easy to maneuver from, keeping the elevations behind and to your right, with the lower parts in front and the higher parts behind. Generally, an army prefers high ground and avoids low ground, appreciates the light and hates the dark. High ground is stimulating, and therefore people feel comfortable on it, and it is good for gaining momentum. The low ground is humid, which causes diseases and makes fighting difficult. Take care of the physical health of your soldiers with the best resources available. When there is no disease in an army, it is said that it is invincible. Where there are mounds and embankments, stand on their sunny side, always keeping them to your right and behind. Positioning yourself in the best part of the terrain is advantageous for a military force. The advantage in a military operation consists in taking advantage of all the beneficial factors of the terrain. When it rains upstream and the current brings the foam with it, if you want to cross it, wait until it clears. Whenever a piece of terrain presents impassable ravines, closed places, traps, hazards, crevasses and natural prisons, you must leave it quickly and stay away from it. As far as I am concerned, I always keep away from these terrain features, so that the opponents are closer to them than I am. I face these accidents, so that they remain behind the enemy. So you are in an advantageous situation, and he has unfavorable conditions. When an army is moving, if it crosses mountainous territories with many streams and wells, or swamps covered with reeds, or virgin forests full of trees and vegetation, it is essential to scrutinize them fully and carefully, since these places help ambushes and the spies. It is essential to get off your horse and scan the terrain, in case there are hidden troops to ambush you. It could also be that there are spies lurking around watching you and listening to your instructions and movements. When the enemy is close, but remains calm, it means that he is in a strong position. When he's away but trying to provoke hostilities, he wants you to move on. If, in addition, your position is accessible, that means that it is favorable to you. If an adversary does not maintain the position that is favorable to him due to the conditions of the terrain and is located in another convenient place, it must be because there is some tactical advantage for acting in this way. If the trees move, the enemy is getting closer. If there are obstacles among the bushes, you have taken a wrong path. The idea of putting a lot of obstacles in the brush is to make you think that there are ambushing troops hiding in the middle of it. If the birds take flight, there are ambushed troops in place. If the animals are scared, there are attacking troops. If tall, thick columns of dust rise, cars are approaching. If they are low and wide, foot soldiers approach. Scattered smoke means wood is being cut. Small dust clouds that come and go indicate that camp must be broken. If the enemy's emissaries speak humble words while the enemy increases his war preparations, this means that he is going to advance. When high-sounding words are uttered and ostentatiously advanced, it is a signal that the enemy is about to withdraw. If his emissaries come with humble words, send spies to observe the enemy and you will see that he is increasing his war preparations. When light tanks come out first and move to the flanks, they are establishing a front line. If the emissaries arrive asking for peace without signing a treaty, it means that they are hatching some plot. If the enemy quickly arranges his tanks in combat ranks, it means that he is waiting for reinforcements. They will not rush for an ordinary meeting if they do not understand that it will help them, or there must be a force that is at a distance and that is expected at a certain moment to unite their troops and attack you. It is convenient to anticipate, to prepare immediately for this eventuality. If half of his troops advance and the other half retreat, the enemy is planning to lure you into a trap. The enemy is feigning confusion and disorder in this case to entice you to advance. If enemy soldiers lean on each other, they are hungry. If the water carriers drink first, the troops are thirsty. If the enemy sees an advantage but does not take advantage of it, it is because he is tired. If the birds gather in the enemy camp, it means that the place is empty. If there are birds flying over a city, the army has fled. If there are nocturnal calls, it means that the enemy soldiers are afraid. They are afraid and restless, and therefore they call each other. If the army has no discipline, this means that the general is not taken seriously. If the banners are moving, you are in confusion. The signs are used to unify the group, so, if he moves from here to there without order or concert, it means that his ranks are confused. If their emissaries show irritation, it means they are tired. If they kill their horses for meat, the soldiers lack food. When they have no kettles and do not return to their camp, they are utterly hopeless enemies. If there is gossip, lack of discipline and the soldiers talk a lot among themselves, it means that the loyalty of the troops has been lost. Backbiting describes the expression of true feelings, lack of discipline indicates problems with superiors. When the command has lost the loyalty of the troops, soldiers talk candidly with each other about problems with their superiors. If numerous rewards are awarded, the enemy is at a dead end. When too many punishments are ordered, the enemy is desperate. When the strength of their momentum is depleted, they give out constant rewards to keep the soldiers happy, to prevent them from revolting en masse. When the soldiers are so exhausted that they cannot carry out orders, they are punished over and over again to restore authority. Being violent at first and then ending up fearing your own soldiers is the height of ineptitude. The emissaries who come with a conciliatory attitude indicate that the enemy wants a truce. If the enemy troops confront you ardently, but delay the time to engage without leaving the ground, you have to watch them carefully. They are preparing a surprise attack. In military matters, it is not necessarily more beneficial to be superior in force, just to avoid acting with unnecessary violence. It is enough to consolidate your power, make estimates on the enemy and manage to gather troops, that's all. The enemy who acts in isolation, who lacks strategy, and who takes his adversaries lightly will inevitably be defeated. If your plan does not contain a withdrawal or post-attack strategy, but you rely exclusively on the strength of your soldiers, and you take your adversaries lightly without assessing their condition, you will surely fall prisoner. If soldiers are punished before they have been made loyal to the command, they will not obey, and if they do not obey, they will be difficult to employ. Nor can they be used if no punishment is carried out, even after their loyalty has been obtained. When there is an underground feeling of appreciation and trust, and the soldiers' hearts are already tied to the command, if discipline is relaxed, the soldiers will become arrogant and it will be impossible to employ them. Therefore, lead them through civilized art and unify them through martial arts. This means continued victory. Civilized art means humanity, and martial arts means regulations. Command them with humanity and benevolence, unify them strictly and firmly. When benevolence and firmness are evident, it is possible to be sure of victory. When orders are given clearly, simply, and consistently to troops, they accept them. When the orders are confusing, contradictory and changing, the troops do not accept them or do not understand them. When orders are reasonable, fair, simple, clear, and consistent, there is reciprocal satisfaction between the leader and the group. Chapter 10. About topology. Some terrain is easy, some difficult, some neutral, some narrow, rough, or open. When the terrain is accessible, be the first to establish your position, choosing sunny heights, a position that is suitable for transporting the supplies, so you will have an advantage when you fight the battle. When you are in difficult terrain to get out of, you are limited. In this terrain, if your enemy is not prepared, you can win if you go ahead, but if the enemy is prepared and you go ahead, you will have a very difficult time getting back to him, which will work against you. When it is unfavorable ground for both sides, it is said to be neutral ground. On neutral ground, even if the adversary offers you an advantage, do not take advantage of it, withdraw, inducing half of the enemy troops to leave, and then fall on him taking advantage of this favorable condition. In narrow terrain, if you are the first to arrive, you must fully occupy it and wait for the opponent. If he gets there first, don't chase him if he blocks the gorges. Chase him only if he doesn't block them. In rough terrain, if you are the first to arrive, you must occupy their high and sunny points and wait for the adversary. If he has occupied them before, withdraw and do not chase him. On open ground, the force of the momentum is evenly matched, and it is difficult to provoke him into fighting at his disadvantage. Understanding these 6 terrain classes is the general's primary responsibility, and it is imperative to consider them. These are the terrain configurations. Generals who ignore them are defeated. Thus, among the troops are those who flee, those who withdraw, those who collapse, those who rebel, and those who are defeated. None of these circumstances constitute natural disasters, but are due to the mistakes of the generals. Troops that have the same momentum but attack at a ratio of 1 to 10 are defeated. Those with strong troops but weak officers remain withdrawn. Those with weak soldiers under strong officers will be in trouble. When senior officers are angry and violent, facing the enemy on their own and out of spite, and when generals are ignorant of their capabilities, the army will fall apart. As a general rule, in order to defeat the enemy, the entire military command must have a single intention and all military forces must cooperate. When generals are weak and lacking in authority, when orders are unclear, when officers and soldiers are weak, and formations are lawless, revolt occurs. The generals who are defeated are those who are unable to calibrate their adversaries, enter into combat with superior numbers or better equipped forces, and do not select their troops according to their levels of readiness. If you employ soldiers without selecting the prepared from the unprepared, the fearless and the timorous, you are asking for your own defeat. These are the 6 ways to be defeated. Understanding these situations is the supreme responsibility of the generals and must be considered. The first is not to calibrate the number of forces, the second, the absence of a clear system of rewards and punishments, the third, insufficient training, the fourth is irrational passion, the fifth is the ineffectiveness of the law of order, and the sixth is the failure to select strong and determined soldiers. The lay of the land can be a support for the army. For military commanders, the proper course of action is to gauge the adversary to ensure victory and calculate the risks and distances. Those who fight battles knowing these elements are victorious, those who fight ignoring them are defeated. Therefore, when the laws of war signal certain victory, it is clearly appropriate to engage in battle, even if the government has given orders not to attack. If the laws of war do not indicate certain victory, it is proper not to go into battle, even if the government has given the order to attack. In this way, progress is made without claiming glory, withdrawal is ordered without avoiding responsibility, with the sole purpose of protecting the population and also for the benefit of the government, thus a valuable service is rendered to the nation. Advancing and withdrawing against government orders is not done out of personal interest, but to safeguard the lives of the population and for the true benefit of the government. Servers of this size are very useful for a town. Look at your soldiers as you look at a newborn, so they will be willing to follow you to the deepest valleys. Take care of your soldiers as you take care of your dear children, and they will gladly die with you. But if you're so nice to them that you can't use them, if you're so lenient that you can't order them around, so casual that you can't discipline them, your soldiers will be like spoiled children and therefore worthless. Rewards should not be used alone, nor should punishments be relied upon alone. Otherwise, the troops, like cuddly children, get used to enjoying or resenting everything. This is harmful and renders them useless. If you know that your soldiers are capable of attacking, but you don't know if the enemy is invulnerable to attack, you have only half the chance of winning. If you know your enemy is vulnerable to attack, but don't know if your soldiers are capable of attacking, you only have half the chance of winning. If you know that the enemy is vulnerable to an attack, and your soldiers can carry it out, but you don't know if the ground conditions are favorable for battle, you have half the chance of winning. Therefore, those who know martial arts do not waste time when making their movements, nor are they exhausted when attacking. Because of this it is said that when you know yourself and others, victory is not a danger. When you know heaven and earth, victory is inexhaustible. Chapter 11. On the 9 kinds of terrain. According to the laws of military operations, there are 9 classes of terrain. If local interests fight each other on their own territory, this is called dispersal ground. When soldiers are attached to their home and fight close to home, they can be easily scattered. When you enter someone else's territory, but you don't do it in depth, it is called light territory. This means that soldiers can return easily. Territory that may be advantageous to you if you take it, and advantageous to the enemy if he conquers it, is called key terrain. An unavoidable fighting ground is any defensive enclave or strategic pass. A territory equally accessible to you and to others is called a communication terrain. The territory that is surrounded by 3 rival territories and is the first to provide free access to it to everyone is called the intersection terrain. The intersection terrain is the one where the main communication routes converge, uniting them with each other. Be the first to occupy it, and the people will have to side with you. If you get it, you are safe. If you lose it, you are in danger. When you go deep into foreign territory, and leave behind many cities and towns, this terrain is called difficult. It is a terrain from which it is difficult to return. When you traverse forested mountains, rugged gorges, or other hard-to-traverse features, this is called unfavorable terrain. When the access is narrow and the exit is tortuous, so that a small enemy unit can attack you, even if your troops are more numerous, this is called enclosed terrain. If you are capable of great adaptation, you can traverse this territory. If you can only survive in a territory by fighting quickly, and if it's easy to die if you don't, this is called death terrain. Troops in deadly terrain are in the same situation as if they were on a sinking boat or a burning house. So, don't fight on dispersal ground, don't stop on light ground, don't attack on key ground, occupied by the enemy, don't let your troops be divided on communication ground. In intersecting terrain, it establishes communications. In difficult terrain, go unprovisioned. On unfavorable terrain, keep marching on. In fenced land, make plans. On deadly grounds, fight. In scattered terrain, soldiers can run away. Light ground is when soldiers have entered enemy territory, but still don't have their backs covered, so their minds aren't really focused and they're not ready for battle. It is not advantageous to attack the enemy in key terrain. What is advantageous is to reach it first. The ground of communication should not be allowed to be isolated, in order to be able to use supply routes. In intersecting terrain, you will be safe if you establish alliances. If you lose them, you will find yourself in danger. In difficult terrain, going in provisioned means gathering everything you need to stay there for a long time. On unfavorable terrain, since you cannot entrench yourself in it, you must rush out. In fenced-off terrain, introduce surprise tactics. If the troops fall on deadly ground, everyone will fight back spontaneously. This is why it is said, place troops on deadly ground and they will survive. Those who were previously considered experts in the art of war were able to make the enemy lose contact between his vanguard and his rear, trust between large and small units, reciprocal interest in the well-being of different ranks, mutual support between rulers and ruled, the enlistment of soldiers and the coherence of their armies. These experts went into action when it was to their advantage, and withheld otherwise. They made changes to confuse the enemy, attacking them here and there, terrifying and confusing them so that they did not have time to plan. You might wonder how to deal with numerous and well-organized enemy forces heading your way. The answer is to first take away something they appreciate, and then they will listen to you. The speed of action is the essential factor of the condition of the military force, taking advantage of the mistakes of the adversaries, moving in ways that they do not expect and attacking when they are not on their guard. This means that in order to take advantage of your opponent's lack of preparation, vision and caution, it is necessary to act quickly, and that if you hesitate, those mistakes will not help you. In an invasion, as a general rule, the further the invaders push into foreign territory, the stronger they become, to the point where the native government can no longer expel them. Choose fertile fields, and the troops will have enough to eat. Take care of your health and avoid fatigue, consolidate your energy, increase your strength. May the movements of your troops and the preparation of your plans be unfathomable. Consolidate the most enthusiastic energy of your troops, save the surplus forces, keep your formations and plans secret, remaining unfathomable to enemies, and wait for a vulnerable point to advance. Place your troops at a point with no exit, so they have to die before they can escape. Because, faced with the possibility of death, what will they not be willing to do? The warriors then give the best of their strength. When faced with serious danger, they lose their fear. When there is nowhere to go, they remain steadfast. When they are totally involved in a terrain, they cling to it. If they have no other choice, they will fight to the end. For this reason, soldiers are vigilant without being encouraged, they enlist without being called up, they are friendly without the need for promises, and they can be trusted without the need for orders. This means that when combatants are in danger of death, whatever their rank, they all have the same objective, and are therefore alert without needing to be stimulated, have goodwill spontaneously and without needing to receive commands, and can be trusted naturally without promises or the need for hierarchy. Forbid omens to avoid doubts, and the soldiers will never leave you. If your soldiers do not have riches, it is not because they disdain them. If they don't have more longevity, it's not because they don't want to live longer. The day the order to march is given, the soldiers cry. Thus, an expertly prepared military operation should be like a swift snake that counterattacks with its tail when someone attacks its head, counterattacks with its head when someone attacks its tail, and counterattacks with head and tail when someone attacks it. Through the middle. This image represents the method of a battle line that responds quickly when attacked. A manual of 8 classic battle formations says, make the front the rear, make the rear the front, with 4 heads and 8 tails. Make the head everywhere, and when the enemy charges in the center, head and tail will come to the rescue. The question may be asked whether it is possible to make a military force like a fast snake. The answer is yes. Even people who dislike each other, being in the same boat, will help each other in case of danger of capsizing. It is the force of the situation that makes this happen. For this reason, it is not enough to place trust in tethered horses and fixed wheels. Horses are tethered to form a stable battle line, and wheels are fixed to make the chariots immobile. But even so, this is not secure enough nor can it be trusted. It is necessary to allow variations to the changes that are made, putting the soldiers in deadly situations, so that they fight spontaneously and help each other side by side. This is the path of security and of obtaining a certain victory. The best organization is to make the value express itself and keep it constant. Succeeding with both weak and strong troops is based on the set of circumstances. If you get the terrain advantage, you can defeat opponents, even with light and weak troops. How much more would it be possible for you if you have powerful and seasoned troops? What makes victory possible for both classes of troops is the circumstances of the terrain. Therefore, experts in military operations achieve the cooperation of the troops, in such a way that leading a group is like leading a single individual who has only one option. It is up to the general to be quiet, reserved, fair and methodical. His plans are quiet and absolutely secret so that no one can find out. His command is fair and methodical, so no one dares to take him lightly. You can keep your soldiers clueless and in complete ignorance of your plans. Change their actions and revise their plans, so that no one can recognize them. It changes its location and moves through winding paths, so that no one can anticipate. You can win when no one can understand at any time what your intentions are. Says a great man, the main deception that is valued in military operations is not directed only at the enemies, but begins with the troops themselves, to make them follow you without knowing where they are going. When a general sets a goal for his troops, it is like one who climbs to a high place and then removes the ladder. When a general goes deep into enemy territory, he is testing his full potential. He has made his troops burn their ships and destroy their houses, thus he leads them like a herd, and all know not where they are headed. It is incumbent on generals to rally armies and put them in dangerous situations. They must also examine adaptations to different terrains, the advantages of concentrating or dispersing, and patterns of human feelings and situations. When we talk about the advantages and disadvantages of concentration and dispersion, it means that the patterns of human behavior change according to the different types of land. In general, the general pattern of the invaders is to unite when they are in the heart of enemy territory, but they tend to disperse when they are on the border fringes. When you leave your territory and cross the border in a military operation, you find yourself in isolated terrain. When it is accessible from all points, it is a ground of communication. When you go deep, you are on difficult terrain. When you go low, you are on light ground. When there are impassable thickets behind you and narrow passages ahead, you are in fenced ground. When there's nowhere to go, it's deadly ground. So, in a scattered field, I would unify the minds of the soldiers. On light ground, it would keep them in contact. In key terrain, it would make them rush to take it. In intersecting terrain, I would pay attention to defense. In a field of communication, it would establish solid alliances. In difficult terrain, it would ensure continued supplies. In unfavorable terrain, I would urge my troops to get out of it quickly. In a fenced lot, I would close the entrances. In deadly terrain, I would signal to my troops that there is no chance of survival. For this reason, the psychology of soldiers consists of resisting when surrounded, fighting when it cannot be avoided, and obeying in extreme cases. Until the soldiers are surrounded, they do not have the determination to resist the enemy until victory is achieved. When desperate, they present a unified defense. Therefore, those who are ignorant of enemy plans cannot prepare alliances. Those who are ignorant of the circumstances on the ground cannot maneuver their forces. Those who do not use local guides cannot take advantage of the terrain. The military of an effective government must know all these factors. When the army of an effective government attacks a large territory, the people cannot unite. When your power surpasses the adversaries, it is impossible to make alliances. If you can find out the plans of your adversaries, take advantage of the terrain and maneuver the enemy so that he is defenseless. In this case, not even a large territory can gather enough troops to stop you. Therefore, if you do not fight for alliances, or increase the power of any country, but extend your personal influence by threatening adversaries, all of this makes the enemy country and cities vulnerable. Give unregulated rewards and give unusual commands. Consider the advantage of granting unprecedented rewards. Watch as the enemy makes promises without regard to the established codes. Handle the troops as if they were one person. Use them in real tasks, but don't talk to them. Motivate them with rewards, but don't tell them about the possible detriment. Employ your soldiers only in combat, without communicating your strategy to them. Let them know about the benefits that await them, but don't tell them about the potential harm. If the true is said, your plan will fail. If the soldiers start to worry, they will become hesitant and fearful. Put them in a situation of possible extermination, and then they will fight to live. Put them in mortal danger, and then they will survive. When troops face danger, they are able to fight for victory. Thus, the task of a military operation is to pretend to accommodate the enemy's intentions. If you fully concentrate on this one, you can kill his general even if you are miles away. This is called expertly meet the target. At first you accommodate their intentions, then you kill their generals. This is the skill in accomplishing the objective. Thus, the day war is declared, the borders are closed, the safe conducts are broken and the passage of emissaries is prevented. Issues are rigorously decided from the beginning of planning and establishing the strategy from home or headquarters. The rigor in the headquarters in the planning phase refers to the maintenance of secrecy. When the enemy offers opportunities, seize them immediately. Find out first what he wants, and then anticipate him. Maintain discipline and adapt to the enemy, to determine the outcome of the war. So, at first you are like a maiden and the enemy opens his gates, then, you are like a loose hair, and the enemy will not be able to expel you. Chapter 12. On the art of attacking by fire. There are 5 kinds of fire attacks: burning people, burning supplies, burning equipment, burning stores, and burning weapons. The use of fire has to have a basis, and requires certain means. There are suitable times to light fires, specifically when the weather is dry and windy. Normally, in attacks by fire it is essential to follow the changes produced by it. When the fire is inside the enemy camp, prepare quickly from outside. If the soldiers remain calm when the fire breaks out, wait and don't attack. When the fire reaches its peak, follow it if you can; if not, wait. In general, fire is used to sow confusion in the enemy so that they can attack him. When the fire can be lit in the open field, do not wait to do it inside, do it when appropriate. When the fire is fanned by the wind, do not attack in the opposite direction to it. It is not effective to fight against the impetus of fire, because the enemy will fight to the death in this case. If the wind has blown during the day, at night it will subside. A daytime wind will cease at nightfall, a night wind will cease at dawn. Armies need to know that there are variants of the 5 kinds of fire attacks, and adapt to them rationally. It is not enough to know how to attack others with fire, it is necessary to know how to prevent others from attacking you. Thus, the use of fire to support an attack means clarity, and the use of water to support an attack means strength. Water can isolate, but it cannot raise. Water can be used to divide an enemy army so that their force is united and yours is strengthened. Winning in combat or carrying out a victorious siege without rewarding those who have done merit brings bad fortune and earns oneself to be called miser. That is why it is said that an enlightened government takes it into account and that a good military command rewards merit. They do not mobilize their troops when there is no advantage to be gained, nor do they act when there is nothing to gain, nor do they fight when there is no danger. Weapons are ominous instruments, and war is a dangerous business. It is essential to prevent a disastrous defeat, and therefore it is not worth mobilizing an army for insignificant reasons. Weapons should only be used when there is no other remedy. A government should not mobilize an army out of anger, and military commanders should not provoke war out of anger. Act when it is beneficial, otherwise, give up. Anger can be turned into joy, and anger can be turned into pleasure, but a destroyed people cannot be brought back to life, and death cannot be turned into life. Consequently, an enlightened government pays attention to all this, and a good military command takes it into account. This is the way to keep the nation safe and keep its army intact. Chapter 13. On Concord and Discord. A military operation means a great effort for the people, and the war can last many years to obtain a one-day victory. Thus, failing to know the situation of the adversaries by economizing on approving expenses to investigate and study the opposition is extremely inhuman, and is not typical of a good military commander, a government advisor, or a victorious ruler. Therefore, what makes it possible for an intelligent government and a wise military command to beat others and achieve extraordinary successes with that essential information? Previous information cannot be obtained from ghosts or spirits, nor can it be obtained by analogy, nor discovered by calculation. It must be obtained from people who know the situation of the adversary. There are 5 kinds of spies: the native spy, the insider spy, the double agent, the liquidable spy, and the floating spy. When all of them are active, no one knows their roots. This is called organizational genius, and applies to the ruler. The native spies are hired among the inhabitants of a locality. Internal spies are hired among enemy officials. Double agents are hired among enemy spies. Killable spies transmit false data to enemy spies. The floating spies return with their reports. Among the officials of the enemy regime, there are those with whom you can establish contact and who can be bribed to find out the situation in your country and discover any plan that is hatched against you. They can also be used to create disagreements and disharmony. Consequently, no one in the military is treated with as much familiarity as spies, no one is given as large rewards as they are, and no business is more secret than espionage. If spies are not treated well, they can become renegades and work for the enemy. Spies cannot be used without sagacity and knowledge. You can't use spies without humanity and justice. You can't get the truth out of spies without subtlety. It is certainly a very delicate matter. Spies are useful everywhere. Each matter requires prior knowledge. If any spying matter is disclosed before the spy has reported, the spy and the spier should be removed. Whenever you want to attack an army, besiege a city or attack a person, you must first know the identity of the generals who defend it, their allies, their visitors, their sentinels and their servants, so make your spies find out everything about them. Whenever you are going to attack and fight, you must know the talents of the enemy's servants first, so that you can deal with them according to their abilities. You must look for enemy agents who have come to spy on you, bribe them and induce them to go over to your side, so that you can use them as double agents. With the information obtained this way, you can find native spies and internal spies to hire. With the information obtained from them, you can fabricate false information by serving as liquidable spies. With the information thus obtained, you can make the floating spies act according to the plans. It is essential for a ruler to know the 5 kinds of espionage, and this knowledge depends on double agents, thus, they must be well treated. Thus, only a brilliant ruler or a wise general who can use the most intelligent espionage can be sure of victory. Espionage is essential for military operations, and armies depend on it to carry out their actions. It will not be advantageous for the army to act without knowing the enemy's situation, and knowing the enemy's situation is not possible without espionage.